All right, good evening. Hello. How's everybody doing? My name is Brandon Buckles. I am representing Professor Shepard's Lang 120 class, and I'm here to talk to you guys about electric cars. Specifically, whether or not now is the right time to buy an electric car. Historically, electric cars have had a few trade-offs that most people have not been willing to sacrifice in order to own one. Things such as long charge time or short range. And if we go back a little bit farther throughout history, we find that electric cars actually predate the combustion engine by around 60 years. The first electric car was actually built between 1830 and 1840. The first combustion engine didn't come around until 1895. Now, obviously, we know at the turn of the century, electric cars died off and as combustion engines pretty much took over from there. I'm not going to go into detail about exactly what happened there, but a couple of key things that we can take away is that Henry Ford developed a manufacturing process to mass market them to more people, get more cars in the hands of the people. And because these were combustion engine cars, that kind of took over from there. Another key invention was the electric starter, because up until that time, people had to hand crank these things, and it was really, really hard to do. So those two things, with the greater range, the convenience of being able to refuel your car, they kind of spelled the end for electric cars for the better part of 100 years. We didn't really see any major improvements in the electric car again until the end of the 20th century. The rise of the hybrid. In 1997, Toyota released the Prius in Japan and a few other countries. It didn't actually come to America until 2003. But when it did come to America, it just blew up. They sold hundreds of thousands of units, celebrities loved them, and it was promoting them. It was basically free advertisement at that point. And of course, a lot of other companies actually grabbed a hold of that and decided that they wanted to, get into the whole hybrid game as well. And so people like Ford and Honda in particular, they would actually take cars that already existed, such as the Civic, and make a hybrid version of it. It was pretty easy for them at that point. It gave them the best of two worlds. You could still have the range and convenience of being able to fuel up a car, but with the extra battery power, you could actually get a greater range out of it, and it was cleaner running. But the major development didn't come until Tesla showed up the next year. In 2004, Tesla started development on the Roadster, and it wasn't released until 2008. But two very large effects that Tesla had on the market was that it was the first all-electric vehicle to go 200 miles on a single charge, and it was also the first vehicle to use lithium-ion batteries. And this was big because up until that point they were using lead-acid batteries, which is basically a thing that you start up your car with. And in order to get one that size that could actually power a vehicle, it basically took up the entire frame of the vehicle, and it weighed upwards of 1,700 pounds. It was very heavy, very bulky, and didn't charge very fast. It didn't hurt that the Tesla was subjectively not ugly. It was kind of sporty. They used the Lotus Elise design body style. But the biggest problem was that it was still expensive. It was a new technology that kind of happens. It was as close as makes no difference, right around $100,000. And that's out of the wheelhouse of most people. But because they were marginally successful and showed that the technology was there, other companies such as Nissan, Honda, Kia, Ford, GM, BMW, and many, many others decided that they wanted to start kind of delving into all-electric vehicles as well, not just hybrids. And Nissan in particular was very successful. They released the Leaf. And today the Leaf is actually the single most widely sold and successful all-electric car in the world. That one car outsells all of Tesla's stock combined. But the charging was still a pain. Compared to going and fueling up your gas tank, which is right around 5-10 minutes, really depends on the size of your gas tank, most chargers, the ones that you would find in like a parking lot in the mall, which is basically just a stick in the ground with a hose coming out of it, those were very, very slow to charge most, even the smallest all-electric batteries. It could take upwards of 4 hours just to get up to around 70-80%. Now, there are 4 basic levels to these charging stations. The first 2 are basically what I just told you, a little stick out of the ground with a hose. And those ones are the most common, level 1 and 2, but they're also by far the slowest. Because in electric cars, a battery uses DC energy, and what comes out of the ground is using AC energy. So they got to convert it somehow. inside the cars, there was this tiny little converter that would just take a really long time and convert and then charge up the battery. Then you've got the third level of charger, which companies like Honda and Nissan developed this, and they thought they were going to go ahead and just put that converter inside the charging station. So you got something a little bit bigger, much like what you got on this screen with the Tesla. And they've got these really large converters inside, so it just converts it for you and then sends it straight to the battery in the car. And by doing that, you can send a larger amount into the battery. And so with that, the Nissan Leaf, for instance, can go from 0 to 80% charge on these level 3 chargers in about 30 to 45 minutes versus 3 or 4 hours. And the level 4 is reserved for Tesla chargers. They have the biggest batteries, and so they need the fastest chargers, and they develop them themselves. So they've got a much, much larger converter, and with these large batteries, they still can go at about the same speed, 0 to 80% in about 30 minutes. And there's actually plans of developing within the next 2 years one that can do that in 15 minutes. Now think about that. The gassing up at the gas station, 5 to 10 minutes. For most people who actually want to get into the electric car business, the market, and trade up, that's not much of a trade-off for them. I imagine most would be willing to, say, add an extra 5 to 10 minutes just to charge, especially if these are widespread enough that they can just charge up pretty much at any city that they go to. So, now taking it a step further, there are 2 companies in particular who realize that the technology itself is not the only thing that's important with electric cars. It's also the ecosystem. And Tesla and Nissan are those 2 companies. Now, Tesla is already a well-known energy company, not just a motors company. They develop house storage units. They got solar panels and stuff. It can reduce the cost to your home greatly for electricity over the course of time, of course. And they also do that at a large scale as well for cities. And Nissan's not an energy company, but they do have a deal with an energy company. OVO Energy is a British energy company based out of Europe, and they have a deal for 2019 for the brand new Leafs that come out. Anybody living in those areas who buys a new Tesla for 2019, who wants to get into this whole economy, this ecosystem, they can opt into OVO Energy, have OVO Energy be their energy company, and Nissan will give them a home charging unit that's 2-way. That means that once you're done with your day, you come home, you still got a ton of energy left in your battery, and you know that tomorrow you're not going to need much either. You can actually send a little bit of that energy back to OVO. And what OVO will do is they'll pay you for that. And the estimates are that most people, if they do that for a year and do it regularly, fairly consistently, can actually cover almost the entire cost of their entire electric bill at their house, which means it's basically free energy. And if you're charging up your car at one of the Nissan charging stations, those are free. So you're not spending any money. Now the money. Developing these cars, in particular the battery, is not cheap. Lithium-ion batteries, even for your phones in your pockets, they're pretty expensive. And in 2008, the cost of developing and building one of these batteries ranged at $1,000 per kilowatt hour of storage. Now, for comparison, it was estimated that it would need to be $150 per kilowatt hour to compete directly with the standard car today. Now, that was 10 years ago, 2008. As of 2018, we're down to $190 per kilowatt hour. And in 2 years, it's going to be below that mark of $150, which means it'll be cheaper to build and sell an electric car than it will be to build and sell your average sedan today. And let's see. Yeah, so with all that in mind, you've got charging stations that are getting faster and faster every single year. You've got battery capacities that are getting greater and greater every year. Tesla's up to 350 miles now. And with the cost of building them getting cheaper and cheaper every year, I say now is a really good time to buy one. But it's not for me to answer for you. What do you guys think? Any questions?
I got one. Do you know the cycling option options are for the batteries once they hit the max commit line?
I don't know for everybody, but I do know that for Nissan, with this in particular, Nissan doesn't just want to do this power relay. They also want to take old Nissan Leaf batteries, which a lot of people think batteries of that size would go bad really quickly, like 10 years or so. They're actually rated for over 20 years. So by the time you throw your car away, the battery's still got half of its life left. So what they're actually going to do is start using those as home storage as well. You know how Tesla is like $15,000 for one of their storage units and everything like that. Well, Nissan knows that you've got a lot of life left in those batteries, so they're going to give them to you at dirt cheap prices just using these old batteries and have a home storage unit. You just need to cover costs of like solar paneling at that point. Yeah, not a problem. Anybody else? All right, thank you very much, guys.
I really want to get